and teres minor is going to be innervated by axillary nerve. So what axillary nerve is going to innervate is both deltoid and teres minor. Moving on to the posterior musculature, we're going to start off with ligamentum nuchae. This is a ligament going from the base of the skull down to C7, which is the cervical vertebra number 7. We're going to have trapezius, which you probably heard of before this class as your traps. Trapezius will actually have fibers that go down to right about the middle of the back as well. Our next muscle, latissimus dorsi, you may or may not have heard before this class, called your lats. This will go down to the lower back. We also have levator scapulae, which is going to be involved in elevation or lifting up of the scapula. We'll also have 2 rhomboid or rhomboideus muscles. And one thing you want to note is minor, the smaller one actually sits above the bigger major. And then we're going to have teres major, which is going to be the bigger, rounder muscle next to teres minor. So as we take a look at pictures here, ligamentum nuchae, I want to point out right here. So going from that base of the skull down to C7. And then over on this side of the picture, this is all more superficial. So we see trapezius here, and you can see it has multiple parts to it. So where it originates, it's all going to be on this side of the muscle. So it's going to originate on something called the occipital bone, which is a part of the skull that we'll cover in Unit 4. It's going to originate also on ligamentum nuchae, and then also on the spinous processes, which are the bumps of the vertebrae, which we'll cover in Unit Chapter 8. But it's going to originate on the spinous process of C7, so just after ligamentum nuchae ends down to T12. We can follow the fibers to see where it inserts, and it's going to insert onto the spine of the scapula, the acromion, and then parts of the clavicle as well. What trapezius is going to do is when all of the muscle fibers contract, it's going to adduct the scapula, so it's going to move the scapula closer to the vertebral column. When only these upper or superior fibers contract, it's going to elevate the scapula, so lift it up. And it's also going to be involved in turning the head and extending the neck as well. Middle fibers here, when they only are the ones contracting, they will also adduct the scapula. And then the inferior fibers down here, they're going to depress or push down the scapula. The nerve that's going to innervate trapezius is called spinal accessory nerve, which is cranial nerve number 11, but we'll talk more about that in Unit 4. Down here we see parts of latissimus dorsi, but it goes down here to the lower back, and it's actually going to originate on an aponeurosis called the thoracolumbar fascia. And it's also going to originate on the spinous process of T6 all the way down to S5, so very far down the lower back. And it's also going to have a part that originates on the iliac crest. Following the fibers here, you'll see where it inserts as it goes up to the humerus, and it's going to insert on the intertubicular groove or sulcus of the humerus. And what latissimus dorsi is going to do is it's going to be involved in extension of the humerus, so if the humerus were to come out of the screen at us, and then also adduction of the humerus, bringing it closer, and also medial rotation. The nerve that's going to innervate the latissimus dorsi is called the thoracodorsal nerve. Now working on this side, over here, this is going to be underneath trapezius, so this is deeper. And we see levator scapulae right here. So it's going to originate up here, and it's going to originate on the first 4 cervical vertebrae, which you can kind of see it doing with the different parts. And it's going to insert onto the superior angle of the scapula, and what it's going to be involved in is elevating the scapula. The nerve that's going to innervate levator scapulae is called dorsal scapular nerve. We're also going to see our rhomboid muscles right here. So major is this bigger one. Minor is smaller and it sits above it. So we'll start with rhomboid major here. So where it's going to originate is it actually originates on the spinous processes of T2 to T5. So right here, just in the thoracic region. It's going to insert on the vertebral border of the scapula. And what it's going to do is it's going to elevate the scapula and also cause adduction, so bringing it closer to that vertebral column. It's also innervated by the dorsal scapular nerve. Rhomboid minor, just above it, will originate on the spines of C7 to T1. So just right here.